In this video I'm going to explain how the ignition system works, how you can check it. I'm going to include a whole schematic. So if you have troubles with your ignition system, if you don't have spark or whatever, or you just want to check it, then this is the video for you. What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Now in the last video we did the whole transmission system. Well, not completely the transmission system, but the gearing inside of the back part of the engine. Now in the last video I also told you we're gonna move on to the clutch until we have a complete CVT line. But there's been a change of plans and it's all because of one person. One person reminded me of the electrical system, and that is Remy. So hashtag Remy made me do this. Basically what happened, he got a question for his electrical system and I didn't really have the answer, and I tried to figure everything out, and I started working on the electrical system back home. I measured everything out, see how it works, made a whole schematic of it, and I thought, why not test it? So the whole idea is now to get that electrical system working, not completely mounted. We might change up a little bit, but we want to test out if we have spark. That is going to be a big step, getting spark to the bike. That means when we get a carb on there and an exhaust, we can start it. Now I could build the carb now, build the exhaust, and then at the end of that video, hey, next video we're gonna do the electrical system. That's not gonna be fun. So we're gonna do that now, so we have something working, not completely finished, but we have spark to ignite the bike. So that is what I'm gonna do right now. I brought every single stuff that I need for electrical systems. Got my multimeter, got clamps, got wires, got everything. Let's start on the most dreadful part of the build. That is getting spark and the electrical system. So we did it. The wiring system is done. Now it's not in its correct position. I mean, putting the key right here would be a stupid idea, but I mounted it up so you can clearly see how it works, and I will explain everything. I have to say, with the schematics that I'm gonna give you guys, this is not the same colors, but I'm gonna explain that later on. But let's have a look at how it all works and flows and whatever, and you will be able to understand it. Now I have to say, this is a ignition system without a pickup. So if you have a small little black piece on your stator, this is not the wiring system for you. This is a no pickup system. How can you recognize that? From what I've seen online, it is if you have a blue CDI. In the schematics there's all the numbers that you need to know which part and whatever. So let me show you how this setup all works. Now as you can see, there are not much wires on there. To get your ignition you don't need a lot, and it's really not that complicated once you understand it. Let's swallow the wires and I will show you what they do. These are the 4 wires that come from the stator. Now the 2 important ones are the green one and the red one. In the schematics you will see those colors, but the wires coming out are different. Now from the red connector, I used the same color right here, you go up to the ignition, and on the ignition it is the center top one that you need, and the ignition switch connects the red wire with the purple wire. The purple wire goes all the way to the CDI, and from the CDI you have this yellow wire, and that one goes to the ignition coil, and from the ignition coil all the way to the spark plug. Now the rest of the wires, the orange ones, are all ground. They are all connected to each other. So we're going from the ignition coil back to the CDI, from the CDI to the ignition switch, and from the ignition switch back to the stator connector. That is all that you need. So not a lot. Now this could be a little bit complicated when you look at these schematics and the color of these wires, but I'm gonna give you guys a more detailed explanation right now. Okay, this is the full explanation of the electrical schematic for the Fox. Keep in mind that this is a schematic for a non-pickup ignition system. You can recognize a system like this if there is no metal block on your flywheel that passes by a pickup. I also read online that the CDI is blue, but you cannot be 100% sure about that. So if you want to be sure, look at your flywheel. First, let's take a look at the parts you need. I made an exact drawing of everything so you can easily follow along. We have the stator, ignition switch, CDI, and the ignition coil. If we look at the stator, we see 4 wires: green, yellow, black with red, and white. If your colors do not match mine, you can just look at the drawing where the wires are connected and you will see which colors you should use with yours. For the ignition, we have to look at the green and the black with red wire. To make it easy, we give the connections a number 1 and 2. At the ignition switch, we have to look at the 3 top connections. We also give them a number 1, 2 and 3. When the ignition switch is on, the operation of the ignition switch is a connection between number 1 and number 2. In the off position, there is a connection between all connectors, number 1, 2 and 3. With the CDI, we also use 3 connections: bottom left side, top center, and bottom right. For convenience, we will also give them a number. On my drawing, you can also see a number. This number was on my CDI, but this may be different from yours. At the ignition coil, we have 2 connections. We also give them a number for convenience. One of my connections had a blue color. This may be different from yours, and the number you see was on my ignition coil. This may also be different from yours. Now, let's start connecting everything. From the stator, we go with the black and red wire to the middle upper connection on the ignition switch. So from number 2 on the stator to number 2 on the ignition switch. From the ignition switch, we go with the white and black wire to the upper middle connection on the CDI. So from number 1 on the ignition switch to number 2 on the CDI. From the CDI, we go with the yellow and black wire to the black connection of the ignition coil. So from number 3 on the CDI to number 2 on the ignition coil. Now comes the easy step. We connect all remaining connectors together. This in my case with the green wire. So number 1 on the stator with number 3 on the ignition switch, and number 1 on the CDI, and number 1 on the ignition coil. This is the whole electric diagram for the ignition of a Peugeot Fox without a pickup. There will be a link in the description to a picture of the electrical schematics, and once you are heading over there, drop a like on this video and consider subscribing. So now you know how everything works, and if you have any problems, you can check the schematics. If you have spark problems, you can check your own wiring, just follow the schematics, and then you can find what's wrong with your ignition system. I try to make it as easy as possible with the colors and the pictures. I try to represent everything as it should be. The ignition switch, the stator, the ignition coil, and the CDI. I try to give as much and easily understandable information. Now the reason that I did this is because online you cannot really find any good schematic, like a starter schematic for someone who is a noob at electrical systems. So I try to make it as simple as possible, just a schematic for the ignition system. But I think this is more user friendly to have a schematic for just the ignition. If you have a problem with that, there's no point in you studying a schematic that has the front headlight wires and the tail light and the blinkers and the starter. You don't all need that. You just want the ignition. Of course, can't stress this enough, this is a no pickup system. If you have a pickup system, this will be different. There will be more wires on that. I don't have a bike with that kind of ignition, so I cannot make a schematic on that. So I just can make a no pickup schematic. Maybe at some point we have a pickup ignition system and then we can make a schematic for that. But for now, this is how it is. Now, there is still a lot of time in the day, and what I'm gonna do some preparations for next video, and we're gonna open up the clutch, see what we can find, see what we're working with, and yeah. So this is the whole clutch mechanism. As you can see, the clutch right here, it is really dirty and the springs look really rough. So I'm gonna have to disassemble this even more, lubricate every single point, get it all nice and clean and working in perfect condition. But as you can see, it is a standard clutch. No real interesting stuff on here, but it needs to be cleaned. It is very dirty. Next up is the spring, which is not really that tough. There is blue paint on here, but I don't know if it's blue paint because it is a Polini spring. I would really doubt it because we know where the bike came from, and yeah, looking at the condition, it would be strange that there was a Polini spring in there, but it is blue. Maybe standard Foxes come with a blue spring, I don't know. The nut, not really too much excitement there. This is the spring cup. This is where the spring rests in so it doesn't slide around. It's also dirty, pretty much old grease in there. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna polish this, the inside, so we have a better seal with the next part that I'm gonna show you. This is where the whole greasy stuff gets really shown. It is black grease. I think at some point it should have been white, but as you can see, it is totally black. And this part slides over here, and there are some O-rings right here, so I want them to seal up nicely. So polish this and then it will slide on more easily and seal up even better than before. We don't have those O-rings, and the shop that we usually buy at doesn't have those O-rings. So yeah, I don't know, maybe at some point we're gonna replace the whole clutch, so we don't really need that. Next part is this right here. This is where this slides over, and this has to be totally smooth. Now, as I can feel, it is not smooth at all. Keeping in mind that the pins are not in there, so it is a little bit stuck. Also with this part, I'm gonna completely clean it, degrease it, polish this shaft where the whole mechanism slides on, and even the inside where the belt slides on, I'm gonna polish that as well. Scuff it a little bit up and polish it and see what I can get of it. I did that with a variator as well, so why not do it on this? These are the pins, not really too much excitement on there. Now, as you can see, the sliding mechanism is a different shape. It is hook shaped. I'm gonna have to look into that, what that really does. Is it a benefit or a disadvantage? I don't know much stuff about this, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. But yeah, that is the whole clutch. Really dirty, really stock. Yeah, so now you know how the whole ignition system works, and you have a small preview of the clutch. But in the next video, we're gonna continue with the whole clutch and the variator and the belt to get that all nice and perfect and get it closed up, so we don't have to worry about that again, and put the other crankshaft seal in there so we don't have to worry about this whole piece right here. And then we can go on to bigger and better things like carburetor and exhaust and completing the wiring system and whatever, and getting ready for starting. So that is gonna be it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram, and if you're not already subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.